Welcome to The Disruption Is Now. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore how AI is impacting our jobs, careers, lives, and the human experience. Each episode, host Greg Matusky will converse with visionaries and innovators at the forefront of AI, diving into its challenges, opportunities, and impact. So buckle up as we venture into the heart of disruption, and together, let's unfold the future.
Well, welcome to another episode of The Disruption Is Now. I'm the host, Greg Matusky, and it's the podcast where we talk about AI and how it's disrupting everything in our culture and commerce, and certainly in human communications. I'm also the CEO of Gregory FCA, the global PR agency. And this weekend, I had the opportunity to sit down with my son, who we're both on the same wavelength when it comes to AI. He's more on the technical side and the technology. And we talked for about 3 hours about all the cool things that are happening in AI. And at the end, we finally came to the conclusion that we hadn't really spoken about people. And I told him, well, I'm going to have the chance to do that because our guest on the podcast, as we were speaking, is going to be filling us in on the human elements of AI and what it means practically in the workplace. Annemie has had a long career in technology, working for Skype and eBay and PayPal. She now oversees her own consulting firm, which is called Purple Beach. We're going to go into where that name comes. I want to know. But also oversees an innovation fund in portfolio in emerging energy technologies, which is interesting in itself because of the impact that AI is having on our grid and global energy demand. Annemie, thanks for being with us. We're coming to you live from Brighton, UK. If I understand, you have beautiful weather there right now.
100%, yeah. And I've heard, for once I can actually say, wow, the sun is shining in Brighton, and if I look to my left, I'm actually looking out over the ocean, and it's a beautiful day. So actually I should be outside and not inside, to be honest.
Yeah, I just wish I could be there. I'm overlooking my associate Ben down in the basement of our offices where our studios are. But nonetheless, we have a successful conversation. Your background really is in the human element of some of this. Tell us a little bit about your experience as we get into this and your journey of, how you got into artificial intelligence and AI. But first, tell us about your background.
So my background is I'm South African. I've lived in the UK Switzerland before that, in the UK for over 30 years, although I don't want to say that. Feels too long. And I've always had a passion for things innovation. And partly why I set up Purple Beach was to focus on what I called people innovation, because I think what I've seen in whatever organization I worked, whether it was traditional, whether it was the disruptors of their time, the eBays, etc., that we expect people to be innovative in how they engage, how they come up with ideas, while organizations were never innovative with the people. So they used to practice things like human resources and personnel administration, and they spoke about people and talent. But actually, there was never really any people innovation practice. So I was a little bit ahead of the time. And now with the whole AI era arriving, already being here and evolving at pace, I think it's really the time for people innovation to come to its true fruition, and its time has come, not to be ahead of the curve anymore, but actually to ride the wave.
With your spectrum of knowledge and experience with AI, how disruptive and transformative is it going to be to the people element compared to the other waves of technology? Certainly smartphones, GUI interfaces, the internet, e-commerce. Where does this fall, and what opportunities and risks do you think this presents to us?
Yeah, and I think the one thing I feel very passionate about is that we're oversimplifying the conversation around AI and what it will mean for people. I think we focus on the fact, I think the media, it's very popular and very easy to focus on the negative. People will lose their roles, etc. But I have a huge amount of optimism that actually, for the first time, we're entering an era where if leaders and businesses equip their people, we can actually free up people to do the best work of their lives. And what I'm a great ally of and proponent of is to make sure that we take fear out of the conversation as far as the whole AI piece is concerned, and start talking about the new colleagues we can welcome into the workplace. And the new colleagues could be our AI agents, our AI partners, so that together we can do the greatest work possible, whether it's from an operational execution perspective, whether it's from a strategy perspective. But please, can we stop being fearful and move away from all the negativity that I do tend to see in the popular conversations?
And I do think I agree with you 1,000%, Annemie. I can tell you, I'm 64 years old, and AI has reinvigorated my career and allowed me to do the best work I've ever done. Not so much. I came into my world as a business writer, and I don't write much anymore, but I do have to inspire, motivate, and train other people. And AI was one of the greatest gifts I was ever given, because I had spent so much time trying to help people communicate better with not really any quantifiable effect. I would give seminars on writing, and I tried to make them as engaging and exciting as possible. People would leave the room, and still after 2 weeks, it was such a difficult assignment to be able to write. Now, I feel much more liberated that I can show them how to prompt and how to maintain the message, and it comes through. But what do you mean about doing the best work of our lives through AI? I thought this was going to take all that and leave us out in the cold.
Yeah, sit at home and do nothing. And yeah, no, I actually think whilst we will be able to do the best work of our lives, we're going to have to start re-engaging our minds again. We're going to have a different mindset about it. So it won't just happen to us. I think that's the other point I want to make, that we need to choose actively to move into this new way of working. But what I practically mean is a lot of the things that are what we can call, the monotonous, the boring, the grunt work that we all have to do, clearly that could be taken away from us. But I think where the best work of our lives will come, and I'm sure you've had the experiences, if we had where you can actually co-create new and better things with an AI agent working with you, and then it's real basic. It could be, saying maybe let's not use something like a chat GPT as a Google on steroids, but actually let me try and start using it as my thought partner. And already there, to your point around, helping people to write and create the best work they can, that's really where I think the shifts can come. But two things. One, it requires an openness and a willingness to engage our own minds again. I don't know if you've experienced it, but when you really actively work with AI and use it as a thought partner, your brain hurt. Well, my brain certainly hurt in the beginning. I was like, oh, actually, I have to think, and I have to try and think creatively, and I'm being challenged here. And then the second point I'd like to make is, if we think about organizations and business, I think this is going to require very different leadership. Imagine leaders leading humans and agents, and, leadership is going to be completely redefined. And that's where I come back to this notion of people innovation. The AI transformation will happen, but we have to be innovative with how we lead people, with how we equip them, with how we make them be prepared for this age of huge transformation and possibility.
Well, I want to come back to both of those points, and I'll address the first one, and then I don't want to lose the second one with about human leadership. But the first one was on open-mindedness. And I often ask my guests, what about you has AI changed the most as a person? I'll let that lay there. You can think about it. What has it done to you?
Yeah.
And then I'll share with you my experience.
I don't know, but I think I'm speaking from a place of a passion and experience. When I mentioned to you, I had to re-engage my mind in a very different way. It's made me realize that, actually, contrary to what everybody says, artificial intelligence will make us lazy and we won't think anymore. actually it's challenged me. It's challenged me more than some of my human colleagues or human experiences have been able to challenge me in the recent past. Although I do like human challenge, so I don't want it to be interpreted in the wrong way. But I feel like I've been challenged because I've learned how to work very differently with it. And I feel like I'm engaging a different creative and inspiring side of my mind that I actually maybe I'd become a bit lazy and complacent with. I don't know what's been your experience.
I'm a fundamentally more open-minded person. So when you said open-minded, it's shown me that there are other paths to intelligence, which I didn't realize how neural networks are all around us. I didn't understand that. I'm a gardener, and now I believe that there's a very slow-moving neural network in plants that allow them to emerge at certain times, that allow them to, for instance, separate their canopies, trees, separate their canopies from one another. Something's going on there. And, dolphins have intelligence, and AI is cracking the code as to what the language between a dolphin could be. They've been with us forever, animals, and still we can't understand how they communicate. But AI is helping us somewhat do that. So it's just had a profound effect on my thinking. I was reading a book about the World War II and the use of methamphetamines over the weekend. It was called Blitzed. And the writer he was on a podcast. He was talking about how we don't even know how our perceptions are formed, and they're so hard cast, right? For instance, he was interviewing a Vietnamese soldier from what we call the Vietnam War, and he brought up the term Viet Cong, and the soldier from the North, he didn't even recognize that term. They don't call themselves Viet Cong. They never did. That was a propaganda term. But these are the kinds of perceptions that and I think it goes to what you were saying, the flexibility of looking at things in wholly different directions, which I was never challenged to do until I came to OpenAI. I mean, I believe now that there are other intelligence this might sound very, very ethereal, but I just believe intelligence isn't defined by what we know in the world today or what we have seen. I think there is some intelligence within an LLM that it can tease out the human experience just from words. And I've interviewed PhDs in computational linguistics who were shocked that an LLM could perceive and project the world simply from a keyboard. That's my finding. But I want to go back to this leadership issue, because this is really important, I think, where we are today. As I follow a couple thought leaders. Someone said, if AI didn't develop any further than what it is today, Annemie, we'd still have 10 years of work in front of us. So even discounting what will be, let's talk about that human leadership and working simultaneous with people and agents. What's that fundamentally going to do to the role of leaders and workers in production?
I think you've put your finger on something really important there when you spoke about challenge, and we've just exchanged about mindset. So I think what it's going to require is a complete rethinking of what a leader is, how a leader behaves. And at its core, I think there are two things here. I think either leaders are, what I'm observing, and I might be wrong, but certainly what I'm observing is that you either have leaders who are extremely fearful of what is coming, or you have leaders at the moment who, and obviously there are leaders who are passionate, but I think the two extremes that we need to work with are the ones who are either fearful, or those leaders who think that they know what AI is, what it can do, the possibilities that it has, and so on. And I think whilst, fear shuts you down, I equally think a little bit of arrogance in thinking I know equally shuts you down. So what I love you saying is that leaders going forward need to open themselves up again to rise to the challenge. Now, practically, what that would mean is I think a lot of us will, as leaders, need to go back to school, learn. I always say one of the most dangerous things a leader can do is come from a perspective of assumption. So I think leaders aren't really always open to learning, right? And to relearn and to actually learn at the same pace as their employees might be, or no less than people who are going to work for them. But I think for a leader to properly lead in this day and age and what comes in the future, you kind of have to go back to school. Learn the basics, really understand what you're dealing with here, because it's so not what you think. And hopefully through that process, one will have an open-mindedness. And then equally, I think instill that in your workforce, because I think in your workforce, there are these three segments. I think there are those who are passionate, extremely passionate, and too passionate can be equally dangerous. But those who are already passionate, you have those who think they know what it is, but actually therefore limiting themselves, and also then the fearful colleagues. And I think the role of a leader, and this is where it comes right to what you do, Greg, is leaders are going to have to tell this story, find the story for their businesses of what future AI is and can create for their organizations, and take their people along with them on that journey. And this comes before we do any technology work, because I think, and they in today's world, actually these things can go in parallel, but I think good leaders will take the time to not just, and they have to do it quickly and at pace, but not just to fall into, the AI world, but actually say, so what journey do I need to go on as a personal leader? And in consequence, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for the leadership team I might lead? And what is this fundamentally going to mean for my organization? And how can I move it from fear or lack of understanding to openness, and to become an organization that constantly wants to learn, grow, evolve, because that's what you're going to have to do. You as a leader and the people you lead, I think this is the age of learning and non-stop learning, and that's so exciting. And I think
it is exciting. And the interesting part is I often speak on panels, and it always comes around to how do you create an AI ready workforce, right? And I always say, if the leaders don't stay current, right? If they don't know what's happening, they're not going to be able to know the risks and the opportunities. And they're not going to be able to do that through underlings who bring the ideas to them. They have to know this information. They've got to be in front of the wave. They have to be at conferences. They have to be reading thought leadership pieces. They have to have consultants working with them that can explain it. Because the risk is, if it bubbles up from the lower levels, right, it'll be done half-assed. It'll be done without real understanding that you're going down a blind alley, or that you're chasing some shiny, which I see a lot in development work, shiny new thing, which really isn't what is called for. Or it'll be done by outside developers who don't understand the business. The best AI implementations are done when people really understand the business and can create the platforms. So I always say, well, I'm always asked, what kind of guidelines or safeguards did you set up? And I said, well, number one is stay relevant, stay current with everything that's happening in the market. And then everything you can write all kinds of prescriptives, do's and don'ts. But you have to understand first that those do's and don'ts are going to change tomorrow. What was dangerous yesterday, when this whole thing started, everyone said, well, OpenAI can take your prompts and steal them, and all this confidential information will get out. And my opinion was, yeah, that's a problem. And OpenAI is a business, and they're going to hear us, and they're going to make changes. And they have, okay? So it wasn't that you just dismissed it. It was real. But you have to know what the real risks are, so that you aren't limiting yourself in that respect. And I think your point about the age of learning is dead on. When I tell people I spend 2 to 3 hours a day simply learning new things about AI. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm in my little bubble. And it's been such a liberating force. And I've never had an issue where people are so willing to share. I've had instances where I have direct message some of the world's leading thought leaders in AI, and they've been gracious enough to answer my questions. So you can avail yourself to all this. It's where you begin is overwhelming, especially if you're still in the station, because this train has been running now for 3 years. But that's the hardest lesson of all, because leaders, they believe, I think, that they've reached this level because they've reached a level of wisdom and expertise, and they don't want to have that challenged. And boy, can this challenge it. I'm gonna let you speak. That was a long-winded response. But go
I'm
ahead.
just violently agreeing. And I just think that, it's the age of learning. It's the age of courageous leadership. It's the age of goodbye ego. It's the age of, not knowing what you don't know and being proud of that, right? And saying this is all about exploration now. And clearly, like you say, there are guardrails. I'm not saying throw everything out the back door, down the whatever. But, if you don't have this as at the core of your mindset, you might as well just shut up, shut shop, or close your doors and go home. That's fundamentally, and your people won't follow.
You're right. And the opportunities to safely explore have never been more available to us. I mean, this is the entire corpus of human knowledge. I'll give you an example. Everyone says, oh, it's biased.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's biased. It's biased to a Western worldview. ChatGPT was written initially in Romance languages, but you can use it if you're curious to find your own biases. I did this recently. I took a statement and I had ChatGPT write it in Arabic, in Palestinian Arabic.
Yeah.
And then I had the same statement written in Hebrew, right? And I took the Palestinian Arabic and I said, now you're an audience in Tel Aviv. What do you find offensive or biased in this? And then I reversed it. And it gave me a whole world it gave me insight. It shifted my perspective in such a dramatic way that it almost future-proofed me from falling into landmines. So it is bias. But if you're curious, it opens all kinds of things you can do.
Yeah, and I think so. Just to build on that, we recently had did a sprint, and there was a group of diverse leaders present at this sprint talking about this topic around what does a future-ready AI organization look like, and the progress in the discussions and the debates and actual decisions that were taken was really quite phenomenally quick. And after a while, we sat back and said, why did that happen? Because no one in the room knew each other. We did work with an AI agent that helped prompt us. And we came to the conclusion that the role that the AI agent played, although you said, that there is bias inherent, was actually to ask the provocative questions, but without anybody really taking issue, because somehow it wasn't personal. It was just a provocative statement being made, and we all had to engage with it intellectually versus engaging with the person and their background and personality, etc. But actually what it enabled us to do was, in a similar kind of way to what you described there, move and make progress much quickly, because no one was taking personal issue with being challenged. And that was fascinating for me. I hadn't actually either had that insight or experienced that in such depth until, on that occasion.
Let's flip for a second, because you do oversee a portfolio of innovative energy initiatives and startups and ideas. And, when you talk about the scaries, I think we can overcome a lot of the scaries. The one thing that is going to take a lot more work to overcome is energy demand. Obviously, this type of compute requires tremendous energy. And as we create more complex problems for it to solve, it's going to demand even more. Tell me a little bit about that, your hope there. Are we going to be able to produce enough energy to, in fact, democratize this technology so as a kid in Kenya can crack the code on some new protein that will solve some disease. What are your thoughts there?
So this is where I must say that I live in hope. I think the green shoots are there. I think you're absolutely right in terms of saying we're going to need, a lot of more work in this space. As we stand today, would I say I'm extremely hopeful? I'm hopeful, right? But I think that's where we need many more people to engage with this topic and not engage with the topic of energy from the perspective of clearly it's important that we look at it from an environmental perspective. But this is where we need startups, innovators, creatives to really say, let's really start little companies, little businesses. Let's tackle the future of energy, but also focus on this as a topic. And the reason I would say this is important is because if we focus on this topic, it will become an enabler of so much more. But at the moment, I still see, if I look across the board, a lot of focus, quite rightly, being on energy saving solutions and any energy generation solutions, but not enough. I'm not seeing enough startups and entrepreneurs engaging with this as a topic, and it's a difficult one. So unfortunately, I can't say that I'm positive, extremely positive yet. I don't know, Greg. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think of all the things that concern me, energy is the top of the list. As an example, we had nuclear energy in the 1970s. I sit no more than 100 miles from 3 Mile Island, which had the issue that really put the kibosh, really put the strangle on the development of nuclear energy. And I look at that and I see how we walked away from nuclear energy. And I think to myself, we lost 5 decades of development, of startups, of innovation, because there was everybody at there's a nuclear power plant closer called Limerick, and I was told that everybody that works there is 55 years and older because we have no new nuclear engineers. And you hear that and you go, well, I was against nuclear in the 70s and the 80s. Well, yeah, and then we're living with that technology. These reactors are working off technology that's 50 years old. What could have been if there had been a more rational approach to this, and there would have been a conveyor belt of smart people? All the smart people that I know right now are in AI, right? I don't see them in energy. Even my own son, who's an engineer, started in material science and started with a salt based battery company and left because he didn't find batteries to be nearly as exciting as what AI has to offer. And so now he's in AI development, and it seems to be working for him. But that is the one point that concerns me. I don't see an easy answer.
No.
I think we're going to have to accept that we're going to need energy on every level, and where that's going to come from, I'm not sure. But perhaps the push for AI will help us come up with some of those answers. Perhaps
It could. It could. I just think we need to make that equally sexy and interesting, right? And I
right.
think, like you say, it's difficult to compete with when you have AI to compete with, as such, right? As you said, even
Right.
with you experiencing that.
But I do see hope. I see hope. For instance, the same thing is true in aeronautics engineering, in that there were not, for a long time, there were not a lot of smart people going into that pursuit because we had stopped and shut down our look into the skies and our ability to become an interplanetary people. And now I see lots of young people lining up that they want to work for these startups and be a part of it. So it's a question of making it exciting and making it real. I mean, so I have hope there. But anyway,
and investing in it, right? So that it actually becomes worthwhile. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, Annemie, it was a great conversation. I appreciate you for being with us. Let's stay in touch. I think we have many common interests and worldviews on this issue.
Yeah, and it was fun talking to you. And yeah, I'm sure we'll continue the conversation at some other time. Thank you
And
so
I
much.
promised myself one thing: I would get to the root of the name Purple Beach.
Ah, yes. So I wanted something that I have a huge passion for saying what we need to bring together when we're creative is not only creativity, but actually being our analytical minds. And so for me, the colors red and blue represent creativity and the creative mind and the analytical mind. If you combine it, it's purple. And a beach is a place where you go to relax, to be inspired. However, a beach is never the same. It constantly changes and evolves. And so that's really what Purple Beach stands for, right? Bringing the creative and the analytical together, creating spaces where we can constantly meet the changing demands of the world, but also actually enjoy it, be calm, and experience it for ourselves. So that's where the name comes from.
Well, I think you've done that very successfully over the last 30 minutes here in our conversation, because I see a lot of creativity and analytical abilities. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That was fun.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion today and want to continue exploring the transformative power of AI, please check out more episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.